My name is Stephen Leslie, and this afternoon it's my privilege to have Mr. Carlisle Best, to newest member of the senior selection panel for the Barbados senior team. How are you doing, Carlisle?
Well, I'm fine, Stephen. Nice to see you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you, Carlisle, because we've had so different changes, not just in Barbados cricket, but really within West Indies cricket and globally over the last few months. And I want to first start by inviting you, Carlisle, despite you being the newest member of the senior selection panel, to just give us an idea of that journey that would have started back from your primary into your secondary school days as a very prolific batsman and cricketer.
Well, first of all, I must admit that I'm extremely happy and honored to have been invited to sit with the senior selectors of the Barbados Pride side since last year. I think it was November last year. It's something that I have been looking forward to for quite some time and hoping that I'll get that opportunity to play a significant role in the continued development of Barbados cricket, as well as in mentoring and developing players, the personality, helping them with their performance and making them better overall individuals who can serve Barbados anything, not only in cricket, but also off the field. The journey here was a long one, as you know, from LSE, playing under 15, under 19 cricket, played for Barbados and West Indies, and then that journey continued wholesomely into a West Indies side, which I didn't get a lot of opportunities to be part of, but the little opportunities I got, I was still able to come up with a Test 100 and a one-day 100, ODI 100 as well. So I think that journey has been a wholesome and a fairly successful one. Many of my friends and fans would tell me that it was too short and I should have played more, but albeit that as it may, I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and certainly being a national senior team selector now gives me further encouragement that I can make a greater contribution to it.
Well, thank you for that, Carl, because as you know, that journey would have also not just coming through the school system, but that would have involved club cricket here in Barbados. And I want to jog your memory, certainly for you to let me know how competitive club cricket was and how did that really nurture you to become the very prolific player that you would have been certainly for the national team. How was club cricket in those days? Were there any clubs or any players in particular you would want to remember or to highlight today?
Well, when I was about
both on your team and against you.
When I was about to leave school, I was in a conundrum as to which team I would play for. My father used to always tell me about the late Sir Everton Weeks, Seymour MacDonald Nurse, and Herman Griffith, believe it or not. And I got the feeling that he was partial to Empire. But Carlton was closer to me. I used to live in the farm at the time. And Carlton was much closer than Empire was. But some little stories that were not so exciting. He told me about Carlton and not being able to go into the ground and having to look over the wall and so on and so forth would have deterred me. So it was natural that I went to Empire. And not only that, Seymour Nurse was my coach. The late Seymour Nurse was my coach at LSE. And I just love Seymour. I thought he was such a great person, and not just a cricketer. And that's significant, Stephen, that I say that. That those older guys were not only cricketing personalities, they were genuine persons, people who you can approach, people who had respect for you and whom you naturally respected. So they were they were natural individuals and honest individuals from whom you can learn something, and that's important. That they provided you with that tutelage, that understanding, not only about cricket, but also off the field as well. So I gravitated towards Empire Club, and I was fortunate, Leslie, to have met some of the greatest guys I could ever want to meet. Starting with Tony St. Elmo King. I think he was the captain at the time. Gregory Armstrong, Horace Franklin, Wrinkles, Marvin Ali, who was Noel Giddings. Listen to the quality of persons that I'm talking about. We had Urban Cumberbatch at one stage, but that in that kind of environment, you can imagine that it was a nurturing environment. It wasn't just about cricket. These are guys that were accomplished in their jobs, in their professions. Marvin Allen was a teacher, and they had a lot to offer outside of the game. Tony King, who would invite us by his house on many occasions to socialize and fraternize and learn life and get a humbling experience of what this life on this earth was, and being a part of Empire family, what being an Empire player really meant, and it really meant a lot. And as you know, our greatest rivals were just across the road, a stone throw away in Spartan, and a lot of epic battles were recalled many evening after cricket between Empire and Spartan. And you got an appreciation and love or respect for the game and the kind of personality that the game produced in those days. And you remember, Leslie, that we were playing on uncovered pitches. So you had to have a lot of courage. There were days that you know you're not going to score any. If you bat up on a Neville Mason in Catherine, for example, you're not going to score many. Neville was a terror on a wet wicket. So the struggle began, but it began in earnest and with a great deal of humility, respecting Empire Club as an institution and the origins of its existence. If you knew and understood that, then you will have great appreciation for being a member of Empire and what it meant to perform and to perform well for Empire Club.
So Carla, would it be fair to say that a lot of the history of the stalwarts like Herman Griffith, who was one of the founding members of Empire Club, and a lot, as you say, of pride that came in being a member and a representative, that was imparted by those senior players like Mr. Tony King, Noel Gittins, and like you think that they would have been instrumental in imparting that knowledge on you as a young player, and then as you develop?
Yes, Stephen. Of course, they played a tremendous role in my personal development as a cricketer and as an individual. And when it comes to batting, some people will say that I eventually learned to play spin well, but that's only because I had Tony King to teach me. I never forget, Leslie, and sometimes you do this thing, you learn by trial and error. I saw Tony King play against Howard and Holford at Bank Hall. And I could not understand how Tony King never stayed in his piece. He was always down the track. And I said, well, I must try this. This has to be the way to do it. And I remember using my feet and driving over through the coverage, beautiful. Timing was perfect, found the gap. Went up onto the old house and the right-hand side of Empire Club. And funny enough, nobody on the field congratulated me. Nobody was moved. It was an eerie feeling that, look, something is about to happen here. I mean, I thought that was a good shot and nobody's saying anything. Boy, it took the next ball for me to understand why there was this quietness. They call it the calm before the storm. Next ball, down the track again. Got left.
Wow.
And David Murray passed me, coming back to my crease. David Horford passed me, going down to David Horford. And late in the evening, I had a long chat with David Murray. And David told me that the shot was a good shot, but they knew what was coming. They knew what was soon coming. Boy, that was an experience. And I have never since been left down the track by a leg spinner. Ever since then. So to show you the impact of that day's play on me, I failed. And it's so important.
So it would be fair to say
you learn from your failures, not when you do well. It's when you fail is where you need to take stock of what happened and try and correct what you thought was wrong.
I was asking at the end, how valuable was your experience playing for Western Province in South Africa that allowed you to be such a successful first-class cricketer when you played and captained Barbados? How valuable was that experience?
Oh yeah, every experience I've had would have contributed to further success that I've had. I also played for Netherfield in Northern England, in Cumbria, in what you call the Northern League for a year. And I played for Netherfield. That's in England. And I played for Western Province. And I had a year at both places. And as a banker, it wasn't very easy to get time off to play another trade, and pursue another profession, because you assume that a banking profession would trump most things. For me, it wasn't quite the case. I'd rather play cricket than work in a bank. I remember one of my managers said to me once, "Man, Carl, I don't mind you to give you a senior position, and the West Indies Cricket Board call you going down and left me work. You know, you even left the job, you going down play cricket. So we're too worried about you." So I had to balance both worlds, huh? And that's the title of my book, The Best of Both Worlds. Extremely difficult balancing act. It's an act that was hard to do, to be able to play cricket at the highest level and work at the bank. And in the midst of that, completed tertiary education, degree in economics at the University of the West Indies. So all those experiences combined made my journey a very, very complex and difficult to explain one. And there was no precedent. I don't know if anybody else had done all those things together, including speak on ran in a national election, a general election. so prolific. Somebody said to me, Carlisle, look as though you were a jack of all trades and a master of none. I don't always agree with that, but I can't blame them.
Well, Carlo, take me to that for me, one of the highlights of your cricketing career. You did play, as we said earlier, both Test and one-day international cricket for the West Indies, and you have recorded centuries in both formats. But for this conversation, take me to that, your highest score of 164, which was made here at Kensington Oval against the England side. Let's take us through how everything went, the flow, and for the benefit of those who are watching this in the social media world, the fact that you were playing, I believe, under the captaincy of Sir Vivian Richards, one of the Test captains that is heralded globally. How was that 164? One of the highlights, I believe, of your international career.
Funny enough, Leslie, you would ask me about the Test 164, but my true fans, people who really follow my career closely, would not put that 164 against 179 against Trinidad and Tobago. I'm just giving you a little bit of education there.
Yes.
179 against Trinidad and Tobago at Bridgetown was arguably my best innings ever. And supporting that was the comments from Desmond Haynes. When he came to me in the dressing room and said, and no better person than Desmond to say it, no? He said, Carlisle, the only thing wrong with that 100 is that it wasn't a test match. And those were humbling words. I mean, Desmond perhaps doesn't know it, but I have a great degree of respect and gratitude having heard Desmond utter those words. It was against Ranjin Anand and Mahabir, leg spinner. Remember, we talked about Horford at Bank Hall.
Yes.
So you could see how Horford at Bank Hall was able to dovetail into Mahabir at Bridgetown. And Ranjin Anand, Howard takes the place of Ranjin Anand. But let's talk about the 164 you wanted to talk about. The 164 was special. It was absolutely special, and it's special for a lot of reasons. I was in and out of the team in '86. Got dropped after 2 matches, although we were two love up. Richards didn't think he wanted to continue with me. In fact, he said that he wanted the option of another spinner, and I was dropped after 2 matches. I think 2 matches. I don't hold it very close to my chest, and came back in 1990. So there was about 5 or 6 year hiatus and exclusion when I came back in 1990. But mark you, Leslie, all along, I was never deterred. And that is what I got to share with lots of young players, that you never give up. I got top of the Barbados team in 1980 after again 2 matches. And only recently I had to recite this story to one of my friends. When I said my scores were 10-10 at Port of Spain and 6 here at Bridgetown against the Windward, when my good friend who had toured with me, the Young West Indies team to England, Winston Davis, he got me out for 6 and he was quick. So that coming back into the team in 1990 was again marked by ins and outs. 12th man. I was 12th man, Leslie, you wouldn't know this. For 13 consecutive games under Viv Richards' leadership.
Wow.
13. And I never gave up because I knew I had earned the right to be in that company. I had earned the right to be in West Indies 13. If you look back at this, my first class record during that entire 80s, you know why I was there. And I knew why I was there, and I was confident. I was never going to give up. And when I got a call, I was in England, Netherfield, when I got the call that I was recalled to the West Indies team against England. And what happened? I think a couple of games were washed out, and we eventually arrived in Barbados with the score being 1-0. I think we lost in Jamaica, really bad. Guyana was washed out. Trinidad was also affected badly by rain. So Barbados was our salvation. And we had to level the series here in Barbados. And that which we did. And the difference between the two teams was exactly my 164. I think statistically, diagrammatically, 164 separated team. And that represented my score. Curly Ambrose got 6 or 8 wickets. 8 wickets in the game, 6 in the second innings. That leveled the series, and he got the man of the match. I got my finger broken in that game, and I didn't play again. So that 164 was special for lots and lots of reasons. It was the culmination of a long and hard work and wait to get back into a side, a place where I thought I belonged, with all kinds of ditches and valleys and all kinds of obstacles. It was like an obstacle course for me. And I need to make the point, though, that Lloyd's career ended in 1985, and I started my career in 1986. But if you recall that prior to 1985, I was still dominant in regional cricket. And I always ask myself the question, why under Lloyd, I couldn't get in the side? And maybe one day I meet Lloyd, I would ask him a question. Although I know the answer, I'm still prepared to ask him the question. And if he listens to this broadcast, he can proffer a response. But I know deep down in my soul what it was. Anyway, all is history. And I started my career in 86, but 164 was brilliant. At the crease, I remember sharing the crease with Viv Richards against Devon Markham. And Richards was so dominant. There's nobody on the planet you want to bat with other than Viv Richards. If you're batting with Viv Richards, everything became icing on the cake because he was so dominant, and he drove fear into the opponents, bowlers, all of them. It didn't matter if he was slow, fast, medium, it didn't matter. So he made an easy passage for you. And this is something that a lot of our top batsmen can't do. They cannot pull others along with them by their ability to bat. When you are batting and you are dominating, the other guy at the other end has to feel a lot of weight off his shoulder. So when you get a player who is stodgy and barely getting along, you can bet for sure that the other guy at the other end is going to find himself struggling as well. You got to maintain a certain level of dominance, and you got a certain level of fear in the opposition. And that's what Viv Richards brought to international cricket. Every time you walk to the crease, every time. So yes, that was in a nutshell.
I really enjoyed it. I just listened, and took in all of that energy that came off of you and the passion. And I really would say to you now that as the manager for marketing and communications at the BCA, I am going to definitely have a part 2 with you, Mr. Best, because you've been brilliant in terms of recapping and showing us how passionate and methodical that it was to be able to get the success. But for the purpose of the last 5 minutes of this interview.
But let's see, before you go on, I hope you were going to say, having heard the interview, that you were going to ask the BCA to have me join you as your deputy marketing.
You're on the ball. You're on the ball, Carol. That most likely after your stewardship as a senior selector will be on the consideration. But what I want to wrap up this particular interview by asking you, Carl, and you mentioned it earlier. Now in your new role as a senior selector, the importance of mentorship, the importance of being able to provide guidance, because for those viewers, again, you were not just involved in selection here at the Barbados senior level. You've done a lot of stints in different areas. I know there was a period that you worked at the University of West Indies as part of the combined campuses and colleges arrangement for first class cricket. But I want to know from you, Carlisle, in a couple of minutes, what would you want to impart, not just on the younger senior players now for the Barbados team, but how you would like your stewardship to be going forward?
But before I start to reply to that, I want to say that I was grateful for the University of the West Indies, though without thanks, for being the chairman of their selectors a couple of years ago when we won the ODI championship. And we had, our odds of winning was close to the lowest, if not the lowest. But our eager and motivation and the processes that we developed on that journey made us successful. And a lot of us don't remember that. And there's not a lot of thanks for that. But that would have prepared me for this opportunity. That's why everything leads into the other. Leslie, you see, there you go. There's a flow, a continuum. So that led me to this place, which gives me great confidence in being here as a national selector. I did it for the CCC, and I know I can do it for Barbados. I said before that the focus has to be player-centered. My involvement will be not just to select a player, but to help that player and other players develop along that journey to international recognition. And that is why I came up with the formula for what I'll be looking for as a selector. First is performance. P. Take some notes there, Leslie. P. Performance. That is absolutely critical to one selection. And almost people will say you select yourself based on your performance, and that took me back to under 15 playing for Barbados, and then under 19 playing for Barbados. You gotta perform, regardless of who else performs. You gotta perform. Then we look at B, behavior. You have to be cognizant of a player's behavior in his group, in the dressing room, on the field. And very often you get feedback about what kind of behavior happens outside of the cricket. Behavior is very important. As you know, you always talk about a child is bad behaved, you don't expect a lot from that child, but behavior is important, and that will channel you, or that is dictated by your attitude. So that's A, PBA, attitude. And your attitude is gonna certainly influence your behavior. When you come to practice, what do you do? Do you stay in the dressing room and hide? Do you help other players? Are you selfish in a corner? Do you speak to the other players? Are you cordial and friendly with other players? That all speaks to the attitude and talks about that chemistry that is important in the dressing room that would mark success for any team. Your attitude. So you're looking at performance, behavior, attitude. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, is ambition. And in explaining that, I want to go back to when I was 10 or 11. A friend of mine told me only a couple of years ago, that he said to me, Carlisle, I bet you don't remember that you told me at age 13, you wanted to, or you will play for West Indies. That was my ambition. So I want to know what is the ambition of all players. Some of them reached their twilight years, Kevin Stout, Jonathan Carter, while the other ones who you would expect to have the ambition of being an international cricketer representing successfully West Indies. Okay, so I need to know that ambition, what efforts and what you're prepared to do as a player to achieve a set of goals and objectives, which would include, of course, the ambition of playing for West Indies. So those are the parameters by which I would want to look at team selection, as well as looking at a three-phase component of structuring a team, where you look at current performers, last year performance, for example, or in this case specifically, all West Indian players. They come first up on the top. Then there's a set of players who you refer to as transition players who are being groomed to replace those test players. And then, of course, wherever there's room, there's not always room. You need that young nursery of player, that new player that you're going to give an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old. You still got to look at Cigarfi Silvers. Cigarfi Silvers started extremely early. So you still got to be looking for that 16, 17-year-old who you can fast track into that national side. So that in a nutshell is what I hope to share and to be a part of being a Barbados Pride senior selector.
Well, Carlisle Best, I want to assure you that we will have a part 2 with you. It was an absolute pleasure having the opportunity to speak with you today, because we are very keen on not just hearing the wealth of knowledge that you would have imparted in this short interview, but to really give everyone an idea of the value and the efforts and the personnel that we have that will develop the Barbados cricket brand. I want to again thank everyone as well. I would allow you as well to give your last comment, but I want to thank everyone as well for being able to be part of this important series. Just reminding everyone that my name is Stephen Leslie. I'm the manager for marketing and communications from the Barbados Cricket Association. And I would invite you now, Carlisle, to give your closing comment.
Yeah, in my parting remarks, I want to say that I almost left out a critical part of my thinking, my philosophy, and that is that I have a zero tolerance to failure attitude towards team selection. And for too long, we've been regurgitating players, we've been recycling players, and I don't think that that's good for the system. New players have to emerge, and you have to find them. And finally, Leslie, our next session, I would suggest that we can focus on batting, I have a program called Batting Psychology and Captaincy. I think that if you think it necessary, important enough, or that I'm qualified to speak on batting psychology and captaincy, we can certainly set up a date and make those two topics our agenda items. Leslie, I want to thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I also want to thank the staff that you work with who religiously call me to ensure that I get my emails and that I'm ready and on and put me on. I want to thank them too very much for the discourse that we've had with them. It was pleasant and certainly enjoyable. Leslie, thank you once again.